Hi guys, in this lesson we're going to be really looking about slope and some other ways we can find slope and just other words that mean the same thing as slope. So first we want to start with this rate of change. And what is a rate of change? So the rate of change is a ratio that shows how one variable changes, right? Because we're looking at this rate of change with respect to another. And we're really going to be seeing this with our x and y values because those are the two variables we're most likely going to be using. So we're looking at slope. That's the biggest thing. So slope is written as a ratio. And remember that a ratio, we'll talk about it down here, is a fraction in simplest form. Which means if you can simplify it at all, then you need to do that because we want to look at these fractions in simplest form. So this is my ratio of the vertical change, right? And vertical is this up and down. So this would be the rise to the horizontal change, which is back and forth, which we would consider called the run. So we're really looking at the rise first and then the run secondly. So this remains constant between any 2 points, which means any point you pick, any 2 points you pick on that line, the slope will be the same between any of them. They can be far apart, they can be close together, it doesn't matter. It's a constant value. Okay? So the variable that we use for slope when we're dealing with this in equations is the letter m. So we will look and we see that we've got different types of slope. So we're going to first draw a picture and then say what it is. So our first type of slope, right, is if we're going this way, and this is a positive slope. I really want you to look at slope as we read. So when you're reading a book or reading words, you read from left to right. We're going to look at these the same way. So as I read this from left to right, it goes up. So that's going to be my positive slope. Then you can imagine I have something that goes down. So that's going to be my negative slope. I have something here, right? If I don't have any increase or decrease, this would be considered a zero slope, right? Because nothing's actually changing. The fourth and final thing is if I have a line that's going straight up and down, it doesn't really have a slope, but it's not considered zero. This is what we would call undefined. And once we look into the slope formula a little bit later, you'll see why this is considered undefined and not a zero. So now let's look at a graph, right? Because we can find slope using graphs and using equations and all of those kinds of things. So first let's start with a graph. So when I look at my slope on a graph, I remember that my m value is my slope and I have my rise over my run. So what I do is I find 2 points, and here we're kind of given a point right here and a point right here, and I figure out how far up do I go. So we just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I go up 7 and I go over 1, 2, 3, 4. So then I look back at my fraction, I say, is this in simplest form or can I simplify my fraction anymore? And I can't simplify it, so this would be my final slope. Okay? And again, I can double check. So as I go from left to right, it is going up, so I know that it is going to be a positive value. So let's look at number 2. So again, I want to find my rise over my run. So I'm going to use this point right here and this point right here. And really, when you're doing this, you can find any 2 points that cross your grid marks. So here we're going to go down 1, 2, 3. So I'm going down 3. And then I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Again, I look at my fraction, I say, oh, I can actually simplify that. Both of these are divisible by 3, so I'm going to divide both by 3. I notice also that I am when I'm reading it, going left to right, I am going down. So it's going to be a negative slope, so I'm right there, and it's a 1/3. Awesome, so now there's a couple more I want you to try. Let's actually look at these 2 graphs and we'll see why here. So here I see I've got my line and I've got my 2 points. So I want to find my rise, and the rise between those 2 points is 0. The run between these 2 points is 4. Well, I know in a fraction, anything when I have 0 in the numerator is a 0. So that's going to be my slope. So let's look at our final, vertical line here. So here I have my 2 points. I've got my rise of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a run of 0. Well, I know in math, I can't ever divide by 0, so that is why this becomes an undefined slope. So now you have a couple more examples that you can work through. to try and find the slope. First thing I always want you to think about is, am I looking at a positive slope or am I looking at a negative slope? And then from there, you can kind of figure out what the values should be. So the next thing we're going to be looking at today is this second page, is looking at the actual slope formula. So let me get where I need to be as well. Okay, so this slope formula is really what we use when we don't have a graph, or even if we do have a graph, it's kind of the one more step of what we're actually using. Okay, so I have 2 points, and remember, because slope is constant, it doesn't matter which 2 points, I just pick any 2 points. So these 2 points are going to be x1, y1, and x2, y2. And it doesn't matter which one is 1 and which one is 2, as long as you put 1 point and then another point. So I'm going to show you this formula, and I'm going to show you the way that I kind of do it, because formulas tend to get all lost in my head and I can't remember which one is which. So I have a different way to do this as well that's doing the same thing. So we're just going to look at a couple of different ways. So the actual formula is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What I want you to notice is both of my y values are on top and both of my x values are on the bottom, or in the denominator. And this point, this is 1 point, right? I said x2 and y2 were 1 point. This would be another point, x1 and y1. And yes, I'm subtracting. Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples. And we're going to do these more than one way. Okay, so if I'm following, let me actually get this back on the screen. The formula I've got, we're going to call this x1, y1, and x2, y2. So if I'm just following my formula, so I've got 3 minus 1 over 4 minus 1. So I end up with 3 minus 1 is 2, 4 minus 1 is 3. This would be my slope. So where this is hard for me to remember is which one's which. So how I do slope, and you can find slope however works for you. If you love the formulas, stick with the formulas. What I always do is I always put my points just one on top of the other. So I've got 1, 1 and 4, 3. Now the biggest thing you have to remember is we always do the y values first. So I would say, what do I do to get from 1 to 3? Well, I have to go up 2 values to get from 1 to 3. Well, what do I do to get from 1 to 4? I have to go up 3 values to get from 1 to 4. So you'll see here I've got the same thing. So I'm really doing the same thing. It's just how you organize it in the formula or in your brain. So let's look at this next example, example number 2. So I've got my x1, y1, and my x2, y2. So I know in my formula I go y2 first, so negative 2 minus 4 over 10 minus a negative 2. And it's really important to keep your negatives in the right place, otherwise you will really get the wrong answer. So I know that a negative 2 minus 4 gives me a negative 6. 10 minus a negative 2, if I'm subtracting a negative, I'm really adding, so I've got a negative 6 over 12. This can be simplified. It's still going to be a negative 1 over 2. This can be done following this same point, and I want you to try that. So now here's some more examples that I really want you to work through and try. And I will post the answers for you. So sometimes in math, we are not given 2 points. Sometimes we're given 1 point and the slope. So then we have to figure out what are some other points that lie on that line. Okay, so here we go. So here's the example. If the slope of the line passing through the points negative 5, 6 and 5, y, which we're trying to figure out, is negative 4/5, find y. So we're going to still use our slope formula from before. Okay, so I know that the slope is negative 4/5. And I know that slope from above is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so my y2 minus my y1 over x2 minus my x1. So then from here I can simplify things. So I see I'm adding here. So I've got a negative 4/5 equals y minus 6 over 10. Because 5 plus 5 is 10. Well, I know that to get rid of these, I have 2 ratios or 2 fractions that are set equal. And when those 2 things are set equal, I can cross multiply, right? And that's only because there's this equal sign in the middle. So I would cross multiply. So I would have 10 times a negative 4, which is negative 40, equals 5 times y minus 6. So remember here I have to always use my parentheses because it's multiplying times the whole thing. So let's go ahead and distribute. So I've got negative 40 equals 5y minus 30. So now I can solve for y. So I would add 30 to both sides. So negative 10 equals 5y and divide by 2. So y equals a negative 5. Oh, I'm sorry, y equals, I'm dividing by 5 here. So y equals a negative 2. So now I was able to find that missing piece of the point because I had the slope. Okay, so let's do one more example together. Let's look at number 13. Okay, so I see I have a slope of 2. And here I'm looking for an x value, but I'm still going to write it the same way. So I've got y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Oops, that's a 3. So again, I've got some negatives, and when I have that double negative, I can go ahead and turn it into a plus. So this would be the same thing as over 1. So I can still cross multiply. So I'm going to have 6 plus 2, so I've got 8 equals 2 times, again, my parentheses, x plus 3. So I can distribute, and then I'm going to go ahead and simplify and solve. Whoops. That is not 24. So 2 times 3 is 6. So then I can subtract my 6. So I've got 2 equals 2x, divide by 2, so x equals 1. So now you'll have several other examples to walk through and keep trying this. I will post all the answers for the example so that you know that you're on track and doing things right. So now that you've worked through slope and how to look at slope and find slope from a graph and when you're given 2 points, now I want you to go ahead and finish these examples, work through it, get that practice, and then start working on homework number 1. Thanks, guys.